The stars shimmered against the black canvas of space. For 3,000 years, the Zalaxian Empire had ruled this part of the galaxy. They controlled 17 star systems, each one bending to their will. No one dared to challenge them. Ambassador Vextor stood in his command chamber watching the blue-green planet grow larger on his view screen. Earth, such a small world, yet it would soon join the Empire. His forearms moved gracefully as he prepared for what should be a simple diplomatic mission. The Zalaxians had done this countless times before. Show up with their massive warships, demand surrender, and watch as another species joined their empire. It was almost boring how predictable it had become, but Earth was different. The humans had only recently started exploring their own solar system. They had basic space stations orbiting their planet and a few small colonies on their moon and Mars. Their technology was primitive compared to the Zalaxian Empire. Captain Jake Miller rubbed his tired eyes as he reviewed the morning reports on the bridge of the United Nations vessel Pioneer. The ship wasn't much to look at, a converted cargo hauler with some weapons bolted on, but she was sturdy and reliable. "Captain, we're picking up something on long-range sensors," Lieutenant Amy Roberts called out from her station. Her fingers danced across the console as she tried to make sense of the readings. Jake walked over to look at her screen. "What do you have, Lieutenant?" "Sir, it's huge. The energy signature is unlike anything in our database. It just appeared at the edge of our solar system and it's heading straight for Earth." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what this meant. First contact. The moment humanity had been preparing for since they discovered they weren't alone in the universe. "Sound General Quarters," Jake ordered calmly. "And get me a direct line to General Frank Carter at Space Command." The alarm klaxons wailed through the ship as crew members rushed to their battle stations. In the weeks that followed, many would look back at this moment as the beginning of everything that changed. 3 hours later, the alien ship stopped just outside Earth's orbital defense perimeter. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The vessel looked like it was carved from a single massive crystal, its surface reflecting starlight in rainbow patterns. It was easily 10 times the size of humanity's largest space station. "They're hailing us, sir," Amy reported, her voice steady despite the sweat on her forehead. "Put it on the main screen," Jake ordered. The view screen flickered and suddenly an alien figure appeared. Ambassador Vextor was unlike anything humans had imagined. He stood 8 feet tall with translucent skin that pulsed with soft blue light. His forearms ended in delicate fingers, and his large eyes held an intelligence that was both fascinating and frightening. "Greetings, humans of Earth," Vextor spoke, his voice smooth and musical. "I am Ambassador Vextor of the Zalaxian Empire. We come with an offer of unity and purpose." Jake stepped forward. "Welcome to our solar system, Ambassador. I'm Captain Jake Miller of the United Nations Space Force. We're honored by your visit." "Your politeness is noted, Captain Miller, but unnecessary," Vextor continued. "The Zalaxian Empire has ruled this sector of the galaxy for 3 millennia. We bring order to chaos, purpose to the purposeless. Your species will join us." Lisa Turner, Jake's first officer, moved closer to her captain. She had a bad feeling about where this conversation was heading. "Ambassador, we're certainly interested in peaceful relations with your empire," Jake said carefully. "Perhaps we could arrange a meeting with our world leaders to discuss." "You misunderstand, Captain," Vextor interrupted, his skin pattern shifting to a deeper blue. "This is not a negotiation. The Zalaxian Empire requires your world's resources and your species service. You have one of your planet's rotations to disable all defensive systems and prepare for integration." The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. This wasn't the first contact scenario they had trained for. "Ambassador Vextor," Jake said, his voice firm, "humanity values its independence. We're willing to discuss trade agreements, cultural exchanges, even alliance possibilities. But we won't surrender our sovereignty." For the first time, Vextor's expression changed. What might have been surprise flickered across his alien features. "In 3,000 years, no species has refused the Empire's offer. You are unusual." "We prefer the term stubborn," Jake replied with a slight smile. Your stubbornness will cost you dearly, Vextor warned. The Empire does not tolerate defiance. You have 1 day to reconsider. After that, we will take what we want by force. The hologram vanished, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Get me that line to General Carter, Jake ordered, and I want all department heads in the conference room in 5 minutes. As his crew jumped into action, Jake stared at the massive alien ship hanging in space. He thought about his daughter back on Earth, about all the families who had no idea their world had just changed forever. What are your orders, sir? Lisa asked quietly. Jake turned to face his crew. These men and women had trained for this possibility, but training and reality were very different things. We prepare for war, he said simply. If the Zalaxian Empire wants Earth, they're going to have to fight for every inch of it. Outside, the crystalline warship glowed brighter, its weapons systems beginning to power up. The countdown had begun. In 24 hours, humanity would face its greatest challenge. But humans had one quality the Zalaxian Empire had never encountered before. They were absolutely terrible at giving up. And that would make all the difference. Deep inside the Zalaxian warship, Supreme Commander Krelak studied the data about Earth's defenses. The command chamber glowed with soft purple light, and holographic displays floated in the air around him. His 6 eyes scanned the information, while his scaled skin shifted from green to orange, a sign of amusement among his species. Their weapons are pathetic, Krelak said to his officers. Nuclear missiles, primitive lasers, and projectile weapons. They don't even have energy shields. Sub-Commander Velna stepped forward cautiously. Unlike her superior, she had studied human history during their journey to Earth. Supreme Commander, their technology may be simple, but their history shows remarkable adaptability in warfare. Perhaps we should consider what? Krelax's scales turned deep red, showing his irritation. We have conquered species that traveled between stars when these humans were still living in caves. Their resistance is meaningless. Back on Earth, the United Nations Security Council had been in emergency session for 6 hours. General Frank Carter stood before the world's leaders, his weathered face serious as he outlined their options. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 18 hours left. Our conventional weapons won't scratch their shields, but we're not defenseless. Dr. Susan Ward, a small woman with sharp eyes and graying hair, activated a holographic display. For the past 5 years since we detected the first signs of alien life, we've been working on Project Hammerfall. We assumed any hostile aliens would have energy shields, so we developed weapons specifically designed to counter them. The Russian representative leaned forward. What kind of weapons? Susan smiled grimly. The Zalaxians rely on energy shields that stop fast-moving objects. But we discovered something interesting. Their shields have trouble with slow-moving objects combined with electromagnetic pulses. We've modified our nuclear warheads to release a special EMP burst, followed by slow penetration kinetic strikes. Will it work? Asked the Chinese representative. We'll find out in 18 hours, Frank replied. On Mars, Colonel Ben Cooper supervised his team in the underground bunker. Red dust swirled outside the reinforced windows as massive railguns were loaded with special ammunition. Remember, timing is everything, Ben told his crews. We hit them with the EMP missiles first, then immediately follow with the kinetic penetrators. No second chances on this. His second-in-command, Major Helen Park, checked her tablet. All stations report ready, sir. The moon bases are synchronized with us. Ben nodded and looked at Earth hanging in the Martian sky. His wife and kids were down there, along with 8 billion other souls counting on them to get this right. The hours ticked by. Around Earth, humanity prepared for war in ways the Zalaxians couldn't imagine. Civilian ships were armed with improvised weapons. Mining vessels loaded their cargo holds with explosives. Even the space stations were turned into weapon platforms. In the Zalaxian War Council, Krelax grew impatient. Why haven't they surrendered? Every other species recognized our superiority by now. The humans are different, Velna observed. They're not acting like a unified species. Each group seems to be preparing independently. Chaos, Krelax scoffed. It will be their downfall. But Velna wasn't so sure. The humans' apparent chaos reminded her of the swarm wars from ancient Zalaxian history, the only conflict her people had ever lost. With 6 hours remaining, Admiral Greg Watson commanded Earth's defensive fleet from Luna Base. His ships were laughably small compared to the Zalaxian vessels, but they were fast and maneuverable. All captains, this is Admiral Watson. Remember your training. We're not trying to destroy them. We're buying time for the special weapons. Scatter pattern Delta, constant movement. Make them chase you. Captain Rachel Kim acknowledged from her destroyer. Copy that, Admiral. My crew's ready to dance. The final hour arrived too quickly. Jake Miller watched from the Pioneer as humanity's deadline approached. Beside him, Amy Roberts monitored communications while Lisa Turner coordinated with the other ships. 1 minute to deadline, Amy announced. Jake activated the fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Captain Miller. Whatever happens next, it's been an honor serving with you. Let's show these aliens what humans are made of. The clock hit 0. Immediately, space erupted into chaos. The Zalaxian fleet, expecting an orderly surrender or a traditional battle formation, instead faced hundreds of ships scattering in every direction like startled birds. What are they doing? Krelax demanded as his tactical displays showed the confusing human movements. Before anyone could answer, alarms screamed through the Zalaxian ships. Missiles launched from Mars and the Moon, bases not heading directly for the alien vessels, but detonating in space around them. Electromagnetic pulses, a Zalaxian technician reported. Our shields are fluctuating. Then came the kinetic strikes, massive tungsten rods moving at speeds just slow enough to slip through the weakened shields. The first rod hit a Zalaxian destroyer, punching through its crystal hull like a needle through fabric. Impossible! Krelax roared as his perfect invasion force took its first casualties. But the humans were just getting started. Civilian mining ships rammed into Zalaxian vessels, detonating their explosive cargo. Fighter pilots flew suicide runs, using their ships as guided missiles. The organized Zalaxian battle plan dissolved into confusion. Dr. Eric Thompson watched the battle from his lab on Phobos. It's working. Their shield frequencies are destabilizing if we can maintain this pressure. In her destroyer, Rachel Kim executed a tight turn around a Zalaxian cruiser, launching a full spread of modified torpedoes. This is for thinking we'd just roll over and die. The battle raged on. The Zalaxians had superior technology, but they had never faced an enemy like humanity. Every tactic in their 3,000-year military doctrine assumed enemies would fight conventionally. The humans did anything but. As the fighting continued, Sub-Commander Velna watched their casualty reports with growing alarm. In just 3 hours of combat, they had lost more ships than in their last 10 conquests combined. Supreme Commander, she reported reluctantly. We've lost 27% of our invasion force. Krelax's scales turned black with rage. Impossible, they're primitives. But the numbers didn't lie. The Zalaxian Empire had made a crucial miscalculation. They had judged humanity by their technology alone, not by their determination, creativity, and willingness to sacrifice everything for freedom, and the battle was far from over. 3 days had passed since the battle began. The space around Earth looked like a graveyard of broken ships and debris. Pieces of crystalline hull from Zalaxian vessels floated alongside twisted metal from human ships. But the fighting continued without pause. Lieutenant Sam Johnson crept through the dark corridor of a captured Zalaxian destroyer. His Special Forces team moved silently behind him, their black combat suits blending with the shadows. They had boarded the enemy ship through a hull breach, and now they had a mission that could change everything. Remember, we need their navigation computer intact, Sam whispered to his team. The tech guys say it's our ticket to understanding their star maps. Sergeant Kate Miller nodded, checking her modified plasma rifle. The weapon had been reverse-engineered from captured Zalaxian technology in the first hours of the war. Humans were good at learning from their enemies. The team reached the command center. 3 Zalaxian guards stood watch, their tall forms casting strange shadows in the blue lighting. Sam gave the signal, and his team struck with perfect precision. The guards fell before they could raise an alarm. Miller, Turner, secure the exits. Everybody else help me with this computer, Sam ordered. As they worked to extract the navigation data, Private Joe Cruz kept watch. Sir, how do we know this thing won't self-destruct when we disconnect it? Sam smiled grimly. We don't. That's why they pay us the big bucks. Meanwhile, on Phobos base, Dr. Eric Thompson made a breakthrough that would give humanity its next advantage. He burst into the command center where General Frank Carter was coordinating the defense. General, we've cracked their shield modulation. Pattern! Eric shouted, waving his tablet excitedly. Frank looked up from the tactical display. Slow down, Doctor. What does that mean for us? Eric took a deep breath. Their shields rotate through different frequencies every few seconds. We thought it was random, but it's not. There's a pattern. If we time our attacks to hit during the weak points in the cycle, our weapons will be 3 times more effective. How quickly can we update our targeting systems? Give me 6 hours, and every human ship will have the new firing solution. On the other side of the battle, the Zalaxian Empire was learning a painful lesson about human nature. They had expected fear and submission after their initial attack. Instead, they got something else entirely: civilian miners from the asteroid. Belt had weaponized their rock-crushing equipment. Cargo haulers had turned into ramming ships. Even damaged human vessels refused to retreat, often using their last moments to crash into enemy ships. Supreme Commander Krelax watched another of his cruisers explode under coordinated human attack. His scales had turned a sickly gray color, a sign of deep distress among his species. How? He muttered. How are they doing this? Sub-Commander Velna approached carefully. Supreme Commander, I believe I understand now. The humans don't fight as one mind like we do. Each group, each ship, even each individual makes their own tactical decisions. It creates chaos. Krelax finished. No, sir. Adaptability. When we destroy one human force, the others don't wait for orders. They immediately change tactics. They learn from each loss and apply that knowledge instantly. The evidence was everywhere. Human ships that had barely dented Zalaxian shields on day 1 were now scoring direct hits. Weapons that shouldn't have worked were being modified in real time. Even human communication systems initially jammed by Zalaxian technology had been reworked to use quantum entanglement stolen from destroyed enemy vessels. In Earth's underground command bunker, world leaders watched the tide of battle slowly turning. The American president turned to her advisors. What's our casualty count? 37,000 military personnel, Madam President, plus over 100,000 civilians who volunteered for the combat ships, an aide reported quietly. Kati, room fell silent. The cost was staggering, but everyone knew it could have been much worse. If they had surrendered, all of humanity would have become slaves to the Empire. Back in space, Captain Nancy White prepared for what she knew was a one-way mission. Her converted mining vessel, the Rock Hopper, was loaded with 30 tons of uranium and a makeshift fusion trigger. She had volunteered for this when her daughter's ship was destroyed on day 2 of the invasion. All systems green, control, Nancy reported. Beginning attack run on the enemy dreadnought. Godspeed, Rockhopper, came the reply from Luna Base. Nancy accelerated toward the massive Zalaxian command ship. Enemy fighters moved to intercept, but she had an escort of human fighters clearing her path. As she closed in, she thought of her daughter and whispered, "This is for you, Sarah." The explosion that followed was visible from Earth's surface. The Zalaxian dreadnought, pride of their fleet, cracked in half like an egg. The psychological impact on the enemy was immediate. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Zalaxian Empire was losing a war. Senator John Davis worked frantically in his secure communication center. He had been reaching out to other species under Zalaxian rule, and finally, he had a breakthrough. "I have Ambassador Zekval of the Thraxian Republic on the line," his aide announced. The holographic image that appeared showed an insect-like being with compound eyes. "Senator Davis, my people have suffered under Zalaxian rule for 800 years. We had given up hope of freedom, but seeing your species resist, it has rekindled something we thought was lost. What are you saying? Ambassador? The Thraxians will provide you with intelligence about Zalaxian supply lines and communication codes. We cannot fight openly yet, but we can help humanity win this war. As the Thraxian data flowed in, human strategists quickly identified vulnerable points in the Zalaxian network. Supply depots, communication relays, and refueling stations all suddenly became targets. Dr. Susan Ward made another crucial discovery. General Carter, we've managed to reverse engineer their faster-than-light communication system. We can now jam their fleet coordination and send false orders. The hunter had become the hunted. Zalaxian ships began receiving conflicting commands. Some fired on their own allies. Others jumped to random coordinates. The Empire's greatest strength, their unified command structure, had become their greatest weakness. As the third day ended, humanity had lost nearly 40% of their ships and stations. But the Zalaxian Empire had lost something more important, their aura of invincibility. And across the galaxy, enslaved species were watching, waiting, and beginning to hope. The war was far from over, but humanity had proven something important. They would not go quietly into servitude. They would fight with everything they had, and they would make their enemies pay dearly for every human life. In the depths of space, the battle raged on, but now it was the Zalaxians who were afraid. 2 weeks into the war, the solar system had become a battlefield unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Wreckage from hundreds of ships drifted through space, creating dangerous debris fields around Earth and Mars. But something remarkable was happening. Humanity was winning. General Frank Carter stood in the war room studying the holographic display of the battle. The red dots representing Zalaxian forces had shrunk dramatically, while blue human positions had multiplied. "Report," Frank commanded. Colonel Maria Santos stepped forward. "Sir, Operation Wildfire is ahead of schedule. We've hit 17 Zalaxian supply depots in the last 48 hours. Their ships are running low on fuel and ammunition." Frank nodded, but his face remained serious. They were winning battles, but the war was far from over. The Zalaxian Empire still had vast resources beyond this solar system. In the asteroid belt, Captain Bill Harris commanded a new type of human warship, one built with stolen Zalaxian technology, combined with human innovation. The ship was ugly, a patchwork of alien crystal and human steel, but it worked. "Target acquired," his weapons officer, Lieutenant Dana Lee, reported. "Zalaxian supply convoy, 6 ships." Bill smiled. "Let's show them what happens when you combine their tech with human creativity. All weapons, fire." The hybrid ship unleashed a devastating barrage. Human missiles fitted with Zalaxian energy warheads screamed through space. The enemy convoy never stood a chance. Meanwhile, the diplomatic front was heating up. Senator John Davis had been working non-stop to build alliances with other species under Zalaxian rule. His latest video conference included representatives from 5 different worlds. "The Zalaxian Empire is vulnerable for the first time in millennia," John told the assembled aliens. "But humanity can't do this alone. We need your help." Ambassador Thrix of the Vendorian Coalition spoke first. Her blue-scaled face showed determination. "My people have manufacturing capabilities. We can produce weapons if you share your shield-breaking technology." "Done," John replied without hesitation. One by one, other species pledged support. The Thraxians offered intelligence, the Kelthani promised food supplies, and the mysterious Void Dancers volunteered their stealth ships for reconnaissance missions. The Zalaxian Empire was no longer fighting just humanity. They were facing a growing rebellion. Back on the Zalaxian flagship, Supreme Commander Krelax raged at his subordinates. His scales had turned deep purple, a color his species only showed in moments of extreme fury. "How did we lose control of this situation?" he demanded. Sub-Commander Velna chose her words carefully. "Supreme Commander, we underestimated human psychological warfare. They've been broadcasting our defeats to every world in the Empire. Species that feared us for millennia now see we can be beaten. And their technology advances too quickly, added Science Officer Dexar. They captured one of our shield generators and within days had reverse-engineered improvements we never thought possible. Krelak slammed his 4 fists on the command table. Prepare the doomsday weapon. If we cannot have this system, no one will. The room fell silent. The doomsday weapon, a device that could destabilize a star, had never been used. It was the Empire's last resort, a threat that had kept rebellious worlds in line for centuries. But humans didn't know about the doomsday weapon yet. They were busy pushing their advantage. Dr. Susan Ward's team had made another breakthrough. They had cracked the Zalaxian faster-than-light drive system. We can't build one yet, Susan explained to the Joint Chiefs, but we understand how it works. More importantly, we can sabotage theirs. General Carter leaned forward. How? We broadcast a specific quantum frequency that interferes with their drive calculations. Any Zalaxian ship trying to jump will end up somewhere else. Maybe inside a star, maybe in deep space. They won't risk it. The plan was implemented immediately. Within hours, the Zalaxian fleet found themselves trapped in the solar system, unable to escape or call for reinforcements. On Europa, the ruins of humanity's destroyed colony became a symbol of resistance. Colonel Ben Cooper led the assault to retake the moon. His forces included humans, Thraxians, and even some Zalaxian defectors who had chosen freedom over empire. The battle for Europa was fierce. Zalaxian ground forces were tough, their powered armor making them nearly invulnerable to small arms fire. But humans had learned to adapt. They used the moon's low gravity to their advantage, employing hit-and-run tactics that left the enemy confused and demoralized. Private Amy Chen found herself face-to-face with a Zalaxian warrior. The alien towered over her, its weapon charging for a killing shot. But Amy didn't freeze. She dove between its legs, planted a magnetic mine on its back, and rolled away as the explosion took down her opponent. "That's for my brother, you bastard," she muttered, thinking of her family killed in the first attack. As the battle for Europa raged, something unexpected happened. A group of Zalaxian soldiers surrendered. It was the first time in the Empire's history that their warriors had chosen capture over death. Captain Jake Miller accepted their surrender personally. He found himself looking at tired, scared beings not so different from humans. One of them, a young officer named Vexnil, spoke in broken English. We were told humans were savages, but you fight with honor. You spare those who yield. The Empire lied to us." Jake nodded. "That's what empires do. They lie to maintain power. But you have a choice now." As news of the surrender spread, more Zalaxian units began to question their orders. The Empire's rigid military discipline, once its greatest strength, started to crack. In space, Admiral Greg Watson coordinated the final push. Human and allied ships surrounded the remaining Zalaxian forces. The enemy fleet was down to less than 30% of its original strength. "This is Admiral Watson to all Zalaxian vessels," he broadcast. "You have 2 options. Surrender and be treated according to the Geneva Convention, or continue fighting and face complete destruction. You have 1 hour to decide." The response came not from Supreme Commander Krelak, but from Sub-Commander Velna. Her holographic image appeared on every human screen. "Admiral Watson, I am taking command of the Zalaxian fleet. Supreme Commander Krelak has been relieved of duty. We need to discuss terms." The war room erupted in cheers, but Frank Carter raised his hand for silence. Wars didn't end this easily. There would be negotiations, problems, and the question of what to do with a fallen empire. But for now, humanity had done the impossible. They had faced the galaxy's greatest power and emerged victorious. The tide had turned and nothing would ever be the same. As Earth's sun rose over the Pacific Ocean, its light reflected off the debris of the greatest space battle in galactic history. Humanity had paid a terrible price, hundreds of thousands dead, colonies destroyed, resources depleted, but they had won more than a war. They had won their freedom and sparked hope across the galaxy. 6 months had passed since the first Zalaxian ship appeared in Earth's skies. Now the once mighty empire was crumbling across the galaxy. Sub-Commander Velna, who had taken control of the Zalaxian forces after deposing Krelax, sat across from human negotiators in the neutral meeting ground aboard a Thraxian vessel. Ambassador Paul Reed represented humanity. He was a tall man with kind eyes, but those eyes had seen too much death in recent months. The terms are straightforward. Sub-Commander, complete withdrawal from human space, recognition of Earth's sovereignty, and reparations for our destroyed colonies. Velna's translucent skin flickered with patterns of defeat, blue and gray swirls that her species showed in moments of surrender. You ask for much, Ambassador Reed. We ask for what's fair, Paul replied firmly. Your empire killed hundreds of thousands of our people, destroyed our colonies, threatened our entire species with slavery. The Thraxian mediator, Ambassador Zekval, chittered softly. The humans showed mercy when they could have destroyed your entire fleet, Sub-Commander. These terms are generous. Velna knew it was true. The humans had developed weapons that could have annihilated every Zalaxian ship. Instead, they had chosen to disable and capture. It was a restraint the Empire would never have shown. There is something else, Velna said quietly. Supreme Commander Krelax activated the Doomsday device before we removed him from power. It's aimed at your son. We need human help to disable it. The room went silent. Paul felt his blood run, cold. Even in defeat, the Empire threatened genocide. Dr. Susan Ward was brought into the negotiations immediately. She studied the Zalaxian technical data with growing concern. This device creates a quantum cascade in stellar cores. If it activates, our sun will go supernova within hours. Can you stop it? Paul asked. Susan nodded slowly. With Zalaxian help, yes, but we need their command codes and technical expertise. For the next 48 hours, human and Zalaxian engineers worked side by side. It was strange seeing former enemies cooperating, but the threat united them. Captain Jake Miller found himself working alongside Vextor, the same ambassador who had delivered the original surrender ultimatum. I don't understand humans, Vextor admitted as they recalibrated a control circuit. We offered you a place in the Empire. Power, technology, protection. Why did you choose to fight? Jake looked up from his work. Because freedom isn't something you can give someone else, it's something we all have by right. Your Empire never understood that. The Doomsday device was finally disabled with just hours to spare. As the quantum field dissipated harmlessly into space, cheers erupted from both human and Zalaxian crew members. They had faced extinction together and survived. The formal surrender ceremony took place on Earth's moon. Representatives from dozens of species attended, not just humans and Zalaxians, but all the worlds that had joined the rebellion. The document they signed didn't just end a war, it marked the beginning of something new. Today, we dissolve the Zalaxian Empire, Velna announced, her voice carrying across the gathered assembly. For 3,000 years we ruled through force and fear. The humans taught us there is another way. General Frank Carter stepped forward. This victory belongs to all free species. Humanity couldn't have won alone. We propose forming a new alliance, one based on mutual respect, shared knowledge, and the protection of freedom for all worlds. The Galactic Alliance was born that day. Unlike the Empire, it had no supreme ruler. Decisions were made by council, with each species having equal voice. Humanity, despite their military victory, claimed no special privilege. Dr. Eric Thompson led the effort to share technology among Alliance members. The Zalaxians withheld their advanced science to maintain control. We'll do the opposite. Every species will have access to faster-than-light travel, advanced medicine, and defensive technologies. Former Zalaxian worlds responded with enthusiasm. On Thraxia, celebrations lasted for weeks as the insectoid species reclaimed their cultural traditions suppressed for 8 centuries. The Vendorians began rebuilding their destroyed libraries. The Kelthani resumed their ancient practice of stellar cartography. Not all transitions were smooth. Some Zalaxian military units refused to accept defeat. becoming pirates and raiders in the outer systems. But they were few, and the new alliance dealt with them swiftly. Admiral Mary Chen commanded humanity's first true warship, built with the fusion of technologies from a dozen species. Standing on the observation deck, she watched Earth spin peacefully below. We learned something important in this war. Strength isn't just about weapons or technology. It's about the will to stand for what's right. The memorial on Europa was completed 1 year after the war's end. It honored not just human casualties, but all who died fighting for freedom. The inscription read, "Here began humanity's stand against tyranny." Here the galaxy learned that the measure of a species isn't in their technology but in their spirit. We came in peace. We fought for freedom. We build for tomorrow. Former Supreme Commander Krellex faced trial for war crimes. In a surprising turn, he eventually became one of the Alliance's strongest supporters. "I spent my life believing might made right," he testified. "The humans proved that right makes might. Their victory wasn't just military, it was moral." Sub-Commander Velna became the Zalaxian representative to the Alliance Council. She worked closely with Senator John Davis to establish new trade routes and cultural exchanges. "My species learned more about themselves in 6 months of war with humanity than in 3 millennia of empire," she often said. The transformation wasn't just political. Human culture spread throughout the galaxy, not through conquest, but through curiosity. Alien species embraced human music, art, and literature. In return, Earth's museums filled with wonders from 100 worlds. Captain Jake Miller retired from military service and became an explorer, mapping new star systems in his hybrid human-Zalaxian ship. His crew included members from 7 different species. "This is what we fought for," he told them as they made their first jump to an unexplored system, "the freedom to choose our own path." 5 years after first contact, the galaxy was unrecognizable. Where once the Zalaxian Empire had ruled through fear, the Galactic Alliance flourished through cooperation. Species that had been enemies for millennia now worked together, traded freely, and shared knowledge. The Zalaxian Empire's first war with humans had indeed been their biggest mistake. But from that mistake came something beautiful, a galaxy united not by force, but by choice. Humanity had given the stars a precious gift, the understanding that diversity and freedom made them all stronger. As Earth's ambassador addressed the Alliance Council on the 5th anniversary of the war's end, she spoke words that echoed across the galaxy. "We didn't set out to destroy an empire. We set out to preserve our freedom. In doing so, we helped create something better, a future where every species can reach for the stars on their own terms." The age of empires had ended. The age of alliance had begun. And at its heart was a simple truth the Zalaxians learned too late. Never underestimate the humans. End.